I'm sure Father Brendan maybe needs no introduction to some of you, but could I tell you, Father Brendan is a Fermanagh man, and he was brought up on a farm near Listonskee. After studying psychology and information technology at university, he worked in a UK computer firm and trained as an interface designer. Can't hear me? Sorry, start again. Sorry, Veronica. Is that better? He worked as an interface designer with Hewlett Packard. Becoming disillusioned with the yuppie way of life, Father Brendan eventually resigned and joined the Jesuits in Dublin in 1992. He walked the Camino de Santiago northern route in 2011 in memory of his brother who died tragically. His book, Redemption Road, is an Irish bestseller and describes the challenges and joys involved in pilgrimage as a grief process. He has written 4 other books on the Camino. Father Brendan is a keen hiker. His love of pilgrimage emerged during his Jesuit training when a companion and he begged their way across northern Spain. Father Brendan currently works now as a spiritual director and retreat giver in Belfast, and I have great pleasure in introducing Father Brendan, and we look forward to his talk tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's lovely to be here. It's a bit intimidating, all these people looking at you. We just say a little prayer, first of all. I remember prayer just simply being real with God. So we just simply ask for God's guidance. We ask for the words tonight. We ask for whatever message is there for people, whatever way it touches your soul. We just ask for that grace, that God would work through this, through us, through the words, through the images, and that something would touch your heart, some message that God wants for you tonight. Just ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. I'm going to tell you a story. It's a true story, okay? And it all starts, remember what Jerry was saying there? I was brought up on a farm in Fermanagh. Everybody knows where Fermanagh is, right? I come from Listonskee, and my dad had a farm, and that was my first Camino, walking on the farm, looking for the cows. This is up around Brookborough in Fermanagh. There's a bit of a mountain. My dad used to rent the mountain, about 200 acres, and he'd send me up even when I was a kid. I was only 9 years old or whatever, and I'd have to go and look for them. And sometimes they'd be in a bog hole, and sometimes you'd have to get help and pull them out and everything. But that's where my love of walking comes from, and I think that's where my vocation comes from, from that thing about being out on your own in nature, and this kind of natural contemplation, just simply looking, seeing the wonder of the world, the joys of nature, the sunrise, the sunset, the changing clouds, the vegetation. And there's something about being out in nature that is extraordinary and that connects you to God. I'm going to come back to that later. There's something special about being out in nature, being away from technology and all of that. So that was my first kind of walking experience. And then, just like Jerry was saying, I worked in England for a number of years in computers, and I got disillusioned with it. And I remember I used to go walking in the mornings before work in this pine forest. And again, I was just trying to get my head clear, the way there's something going on in my life. I'm not sure what it is. And walking helped me to get some clarity, So I remember getting the insight, I'm going to have to go on a retreat. And I went to the Isle of Wight, this Benedictine Abbey, had a retreat, and nothing dramatic happened, but I definitely got the insight, you're going to have to leave this way of life, you're going to have to look for something else. And eventually it was the Jesuit thing, so eventually joined the Jesuits in Dublin, and the Jesuit training goes on forever. You know, it's about 12 years. It's because we're all a little bit slow. That's a joke there, right? And part of the Jesuit training is a walking pilgrimage as well, which was one of the most profound experiences. But then something happened in my life that was really difficult. In 2002, my brother died by suicide back on the farm, you know. And that, probably the worst day of my life then, as the priest in the family, you know, doing the funeral for your brother, just a really, really difficult moment, you know, trying to perform or trying to do something whenever you're just absolutely destroyed inside. But somehow I got the grace, you know, because I really wanted to be the one that spoke about him, because I knew him so well. The two of us had ran the farm together for a number of years. But so this is my brother. That was 2005. So then after that, you know, the way grief takes time, and I was trying to do all the right things and, you know, go for counselling and be in a support group and pray your way through it, is the Jesuit thing. But there was something still missing. And this is just from the funeral that day, you know, back in Lisnaskea, just that one of the worst moments. But even afterwards, there was, you know, trying to come to terms with things. This is done. I was in Galway for part of my posting, and when I was there, and I was just walking down this is the prom, you know, in Galway, the promenade, and when I was walking, I remembered this thing. Remember I said about the Jesuit training, when we were in our second year, you had to walk across Spain. It's a Jesuit Camino, in the footsteps. Remember St. Ignatius of Loyola is the founder of the Jesuits, so you walk in his footsteps. There was two of us, but you have no money, right, and no Spanish, you know, so it's really difficult. But some of the things I learned there were real fundamental things. You have to trust in God, obviously, you know, providence, and to believe that, you know, and to really put your whole self into that, you know, to believe that God is going to provide, and to believe that somebody's going to give you some food today, you know, and you have to trust. It's really difficult. Remember, fear is the enemy, you know, fear is not from God, and fear cripples you. So a lot of it is learning to pray with fear, pray your way through fear, in order to be more trusting, in order to be able to do what God wants, in order to be able to do this walk, you know. So it was an extraordinary experience, you know, getting there at the end of it. I lost a lot of weight, by the way. It's a great weight loss program. But see the sense of faith, of connection, of understanding the way God works, and learning about the way God is, and learning to let go. You know, they talk about let go and let God. So that was the big learning in that. But I remembered that moment when I was in Galway. I remembered that's where I had the real clarity about life and my vocation and certainties about God and life. So I thought, that's what I need to do. When I was in the grief thing, I need to get back on the road. And I thought of the Camino. There was the perfect way to do that, you know, to get back on the road. I'd seen the film The Way. Somebody mentioned it earlier to me. And it's a grief story as well. Martin Sheen loses his son and goes on the way, and he's trying to work through that. So I had the same idea. And I had my brother's T-shirt with me. It was the only thing of his I had left, you know. So I brought that with me as a symbol of him. You know, I'm going to bring this to Santiago. I said to my brothers and sisters, I'm going to put this on the altar in Santiago as a symbol of our brother and a symbol of the journey, and as a grief process, you know, explicitly. This is why I'm doing this. So this is the route. So this is the north of Spain, and see France is just over on the right, the border with France. And then the route, this is the northern route, goes right along the coast. You come down towards the end. This is Santiago, just there, and then finished there is the place at the coast at the very end. So the classic route is called the French route, which runs slightly to the south of that, a bit more directly across to the French border. But I wanted something a bit more remote. I just wanted to walk on my own in the forest, in the hills, just to get my head straight, you know. And it was the right thing. It was a beautiful experience. This is one of the early days, I was up in the Basque Country. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning, and the mist is just rising. I'm on my own. I took this on a timer, on a post, just to capture the moment. And it was beautiful, and just being there. One of the great things about the Camino and walking is it stops the head, stops your head, the ruminations, overthinking things. It gets you into the moment, just to be there and to be present. It's a beautiful thing. It's an extraordinary thing. And it's getting away from technology, getting away from all these worries and preoccupations. All you have to do is get up and walk to the next hostel, It's really simple life. And obviously, as a Jesuit, it's about being with God, being with God all of the time, not just certain moments of the day, but you're immersed in the whole thing. And it's an extraordinary experience, really. It changes your heart, and I felt myself uplifted with that. Even though I had a lot of difficulties, it was 5 weeks, 500 miles, 5 weeks, 5 injuries. I had different injuries, shin splints, blisters is a very common one, and I had to take a couple of days off here and there. And I almost gave up a couple of times, because it's very challenging. But somehow I got the grace to keep going. This is then towards the end. I lost a lot of weight, do you see that? I probably need to go back and do that again, But this is coming into Santiago at the very end. This is called Galicia, and it looks exactly like Fermanagh, It looks like home, and that was really emotional coming into Santiago. And this is the cathedral in Santiago. It's a really famous place where the pilgrims finish, They finish in the cathedral, and it's really emotional. There's thousands of people in this square, people celebrating and whooping, and it's noisy, big fiesta at the very end. But I just wanted to get in there and I was so tired, and I've been through the mill, just wanted to finish at that stage. And I remember kneeling on the floor. See the bandages on the knees at this stage? Everybody gets their, tested and done in a bit in some way. And see the backpack becomes part of you, and you don't even take it off. Even when you're in the church, it just feels like this is so much part of me. It's very minimal gear. You see that? Absolutely minimal, is the key as well. Because early on, carrying too much weight is what caused me a lot of problems. So every day you'd be chucking something out, cutting the towel in half, throwing away that extra pair of socks, that extra shirt, get it down to the minimum. There's this saying that says the Camino teaches you, it teaches you directly. If you bring too much weight, it teaches you have to drop this, If you get lost or whatever, it teaches you have to be focused, you have to watch the signs, you have to keep on track. And God is obviously the teacher through all of this. God teaches us, don't be worried about things, let go, trust, and I'll guide you, it's a profound spiritual experience. And then this is getting to Santiago, and I remember I had my t-shirt, and I was trying to think, how can I get it to the altar, because it was all cordoned off. And then I had the bright idea, well, as a priest, right, I can get up on the altar with the priest at the Mass. So I'm wearing the t-shirt underneath this, right, underneath the vestments, and then I'm up on the altar, all of a sudden, and it comes to the Eucharistic prayer. And that part that says, we remember our brothers and sisters who've fallen asleep in Christ. You remember that bit? All of a sudden, the guy gives that to me. He says, you read that bit, I was absolutely, choked up. And so I'm up on the altar, I'm saying the Eucharistic prayer, and then I think it's all over, and there's a bit of an anticlimax afterwards. And I'm thinking, that's it, I'm going to have to go home now after this experience. Has been great, nothing spectacular. And then I met another Jesuit in Santiago. He lives in the States, and he had exactly the same name as my brother, Donald, And he said, let's go out to Finisterre. Remember, I pointed out on the coast, and I said, look, I'm fed up walking. I said, as long as we take a bus, So we took a bus. I saw people at the very end of the rocks. They burned their stuff. They burned their hiking gear and their boots and their T-shirts and everything. I thought, that's very strange, And then I had this really clear insight. There's something that you have to burn, You imagine what it was. The T-shirt, right? So the next morning, I got up at dawn, fasting, like I had done every other day. I walked out to the end of the thing, and so I burnt my brother's T-shirt, and I had this complete meltdown, emotionally, just a real cathartic release. But it was a gift. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, just to face into it, to give yourself to it, to let go. But it was a real gift. And this picture was taken just directly afterwards. You see the relief, One of the big things about suicide is the guilt and the feeling responsible and what did I miss, So to be able to let go of some of that was a tremendous gift. And then coming back home, and then I used to work for this woman in Jesuit communication, I told her the story, and she said, you have to write that up, And she helped me. She was a journalist. She helped me write the book, And then the book takes off. Originally, I'd given it to this Jesuit publisher, and they turned me down. The book did really well, Sold thousands of copies. I was on the RTE radio and everything. And then the book does really well. We go back to the same publisher, and they take it, So they published the book eventually. So that was amazing. But that book changed my life, because all of a sudden, you're a published author, and all of a sudden you get invited to speak. So I was invited to speak up and down the country, literally all over the country, to speak to bereavement groups, to train people in suicide bereavement, especially for ministers and priests, how to speak to people, what not to say, right? how to help people to get through that. And it was an extraordinary couple of years, Literally once a week I was speaking somewhere up or down the country at a conference or something, and it was amazing. But here's the second part, right? So I went back on the Camino again. I was getting a bit burnt out with all the speaking and traveling and everything, so I thought I need to go back again. So I went on this Camino Ignaciano, which is the Ignatian or the Jesuit Camino, which is the one I did, remember, by training originally. I went back on that almost 25 years later, And unfortunately, on the second day, it was early in the morning, and I took a little shortcut, Don't do this, by the way. Don't do what I did. I took a shortcut, and I got blinded with these car headlights, and I stepped off the road, and I went down on my knee, and I fractured the kneecap, with the weight of the backpack and everything. And so I'm all cut up. I had to go to the medical center. I look a bit sheepish here. See, they bandaged me up, and I'm all scrapes and bruises, but they never checked, they never took an x-ray, right? So they told me, take a few aspirin and keep walking, you're okay. So I'm walking, and I'm thinking, there's something wrong here, I'm in pain, I should have got a medal for this, by the way. So I did about 100 kilometers, on a busted knee. I kept going back to the doctor. I went to 3 doctors. Any doctors here tonight? And they missed it, They kept nobody did an X-ray, and I kept walking, and eventually I had to abandon it, and eventually I had to go home, But I had an extraordinary experience on the Camino, and I met loads of people because I was injured. I met people in the hostels. I was sitting around. I would talk to people. I met this young guy from Spain, and I can speak Spanish because I did my training, some of it in Spanish. And I'm talking to him one morning, and he said, "Yeah, I'm doing this retreat." I said, "That's interesting." I said, "What retreat are you doing?" He said, "I have this book, And I said, "What's the book?" He said, "It's called The Spiritual Exercises of St. Ignatius." He said, "You wouldn't know this." I said, "That's the book that I use all the time to give retreats." And he said, "Oh God, thank God." He said, I'm lost here. I don't know how to use this." I said, "Look, forget that book. That's meant for directors, like it's a manual. I said, this one exercise, I showed him the page, it's called the Examine. It's just a review of the day, a review of your life, where you look back on your experience and reflect. I said, just do that one exercise and explain to him how to do it. So, and off he went, happy as anything. And I was a day behind him, So I get to the next village, and I'm kind of limping along at this stage. And the woman says, "Oh," she says, "we were expecting you." I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, there was a guy here yesterday." He said, "Watch out for the priest with the white bandages." So it was an extraordinary experience in some ways, learning how to deal with, disability, illness, and you're not sure what's happening, You're trying to do your best, you're trying to make good decisions. So eventually I had to abandon it. This is up in the mountains in the Basque Country, and I was a bit forlorn. I was a bit under the weather because of the kind of constant pain and stuff. So eventually I had to come home. I was in the Mater, the hospital up in North Belfast, and they put a cast on. Obviously when they saw the x-ray, there was the crack, like a big canyon in the bone. So they put me in the cast, and I'm laid up at home, and I'm thinking this is all gone wrong, And then I saw this guy on Facebook, this other guy that I barely knew, and he was posting these reflections and photos, and I said, "God, it'd be great if I got together with him." And we did a book together, and eventually we got together, and eventually we did a book, and it was called "Finding God in the Mess." You see the topic, finding God in the mess? So often, it's easy to find God on a nice day and everything's going well, but to find God in the mess, the difficulty, the struggle, that became one of the themes of my life, how to find God in tough times. God is always with us, and sometimes we are not with God, so how to find God in those difficult moments, Anyway, so I got this book, I wrote this book about the experience of that Camino and being injured. There's a big joke in my house, something happens to me, I go to Spain, everything goes wrong, I come home in bandages, and I get a book at the end of it. It's just funny, the way that God works, And also, you need a sense of humor, and not to take yourself too seriously, Obviously, this doesn't happen to everybody on the Camino, so don't be getting too worried, And I think I was probably doing too much. And my expectations, remember from the first one that I did, were sky high. And I had to be much more realistic, You can't have a fantastic experience every time. And also you have to take care and be respectful, And don't take shortcuts, The Camino teaches you, teaches you directly the consequences of things. So this is the Jesuit Camino again. And this is just 2 years ago. I went back on this guy, a taxi driver from Dublin, contacted me. He'd heard about the Ignatian Camino, and he wanted us to walk together on it. So I was in Spain doing a course, so I said sure. So the two of us walked together. This is the Ignatian Camino from the Basque Country up the top, right over to near Barcelona, Manresa it's called. So it actually runs against the main Camino. Remember, the main Camino runs from France out to the left, out west here. One day this guy stopped me and he said, "You're going the wrong way, And I said, "No, you're going the wrong way." But anyway, here's the taxi driver, myself, Jimmy his name was. He's a real character. And he talked all the time, right? And the first day I thought, I'm gonna kill this guy, He's talking away. And then I said, "Look, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll walk on our own, and we'll meet up for a break." And that worked, Everybody was happy. But we ended up doing a retreat together. We ended up, I was helping him. He's a recovering alcoholic. He's been dry for about 10 years. He'd done the AA program, and he was kind of looking for the next step, So I did this retreat with him, like exercises every day, and I would send him bits of scripture, or I would give him some of these exercises from St. Ignatius, to help people how to improve their lives. For example, he had a huge amount of guilt, over all the things he'd done when he was out of control as an alcoholic and how he treated his wife and everything. I was saying to him, we have to let go of this guilt, you know. It's not good to hang on to this. It's not from God. It's not helping you anymore, you know. So you have to trust God's forgiveness, you know. Acknowledging you've made mistakes, you know, there's an appropriate amount of guilt for mistakes you've made, but then it becomes unhealthy. Often it happens to us, you know. We overly hang on to stuff and we beat ourselves up and there's no forgiveness, you know. So to have a healthy way of dealing with mistakes, sin, difficulties, you know, to work through those things. So we had an extraordinary experience of working through things. There was a heat wave on that summer. It was like 40 degrees plus, you know. So it was really difficult. And we had to walk first thing in the morning, like 5 o'clock, with head torches, and then finish about 11. It got so hot, about 30 degrees, you know. So then this is the book that we wrote together called Brothers in Arms, and it's the name of a Dire Straits song, Brothers in Arms, but it kind of captures the two of us, the Brothers in Arms. And he was ex-military, ex-Irish Army, so he loved the story of Ignatius, because Ignatius was a soldier, and so that became the theme for us. And Dire Straits, we were both Dire Straits fans, you know. And then just finally, this is the Sliabh Colm Kill, which is a route up in Donegal, which I'm involved in. So you don't have to go to Spain to do the Camino, is one of my things. You can do it anywhere, as long as you have a couple of key elements, you know. You have to have the pilgrimage, the trail. You have to have a destination. We were walking to St. Colm Kill's birthplace in Garden, Donegal, near Letterkenny. So this is the route. You can't see that too well, but it's the north of Ireland, from way out in Killybegs right up to Scotland to Iona Island. We were just doing the first part in Donegal. So there's a big group of about 15 of us, you know. And I was trying to give them some of the things I'd learned from the Camino, right, which is time alone in silence is the key. So every morning we'd have an hour in silence. We just, you know, we said, now we're going to walk in silence, just like the taxi driver, you know. And we're going to pray for that hour. I would say I'd give them some hints. And then we have another hour in the afternoon. Then in the evening, we'd have Mass and we'd have a reflection on the day. That's the Jesuit thing again. You reflect on your experience. You see where God has been, you know. And again, it worked really powerfully, you know. People got a huge amount out of it. It helped them to get clarity about their lives, about where God was, and what God was saying to them, you know, what they needed to do, things they needed to move away from, things they needed to move towards. God is always bringing us towards something, you know, and away from something else. So that's the Sliabh Colm Kill up in Donegal, another kind of Camino experience. So then just the key elements. A walking trail, obviously, like a long distance trail, a walking trail. But then you need some significant pilgrim destination. The second one, you need some special place. I've done, you know, Croagh-Patrick. I've done that about 25 times with groups, and that is a powerful experience over 2 days, you know. From Ballintubber Abbey, you walk up the mountain over 2 days, and you have Mass on the top of the mountain in that little chapel with the condensation pouring down off the roof and everything. It's an amazing experience. Everybody wants to be there, you know. Everybody's got a reason. Everybody's got a prayer in their hearts, and extraordinary things. So some destination, some simple accommodation, like a hostel or a B&B, church halls, whatever. Time walking in silence is the heart of it. Time alone with God. And low technology, right? Get rid of that phone, you know. Turn it off. You don't need it. And keep it simple, you know. Simple lifestyle. Just walking, a backpack, you know, basic food, rain gear, and nothing else. You don't need anything else, you know. And then some kind of spiritual program or scripture, obviously, something to help us to pray. The Psalms is really powerful, you know, people praying with their lives and people asking God for things, people trying to work through difficult situations. So we give people little bits of scripture, sometimes send it to their phones or give it to them on a little piece of paper, maybe stop them using the phone, but something to focus on, some way of praying. And then time sharing together is the other part of it. Then in the evening, we come together to reflect on the day, have Mass together, share, but talking about your experience, talking about what has happened during the day. And people will say, was this amazing? I saw this flower, or I saw the rain on this leaf, these little tiny details that we often miss. We're too busy. But God's speaking to us through everything. God's always trying to reach us, and we just need to be more open to that, And then, just checking the time here. And then some kind of ritual, celebration, worship Mass, that element of it, some way of ritualizing that, and some way of bringing all that together. So I've loads of other slides, but I would love to hear what people's questions or whatever, just so you can tell me what you'd like to hear next. So anybody like to make a question or reflection or say anything? Otherwise, I'll go on and you'll be bored. I've got a microphone here.
I was just wondering if you had somewhere to stay, or did you sleep out in the rough on the first Camino?
My hearing's not good.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I was just wondering, did you stay out in the open when you were walking the first one just with your backpack and hoping for the best, or did you have places to stay?
That's a good question. Yeah, the one where we did the first one with no money, we ended up having to do just whatever way we could survive. So we slept in garages, we slept in doorways, slept in a ruined castle, and we slept out in a field one night, the first time in my life, I think. And I'll never forget it. It was just a wee hollow in the ground, and we found a bit of plastic, that big kind of sheet, big heavy plastic, and we held it over us, and the wind was whipping off it, and there was these dogs barking in the distance. But I had this powerful sense of God's presence that I'll never forget, and it often comes back to me, moments from that pilgrimage, because it was so difficult. But there was a key moment. I have an article on the internet. It's called "The Day I Almost Gave Up," and it's about that pilgrimage after a week, and we hadn't eaten properly or slept properly, and it was really difficult. And I was thinking, I don't know if I can do this, if I can keep doing this. And the other guy he was with was from Cork, and I was another Jesuit novice, and I was saying to him, I think I'm going to go home, He said, fair enough. He said, if you want to go home, he says, you haven't prayed about this. You haven't prayed about this. It was brilliant. It's the last thing I wanted to hear, at that, but it was a fantastic thing. So I'm in the corner we were in a church hall that night, and we had somebody giving us these emergency Red Cross rations, right, in tins. So we're eating stew out of these tins. And but I'm in the corner of the church hall, and there was this poster of the face of Jesus at the fisherman and the nets. And that picture became the cover for the vow book when I took vows as a Jesuit, permanent vows, That became the cover because it was such a powerful experience. But I prayed that night like I never prayed before. Remember I said about being real with God? I'm saying, God, you have to help me here. I cannot do this myself. You're going to have to help me here. You're going to have to give me the strength, give me the way through this really difficult experience. Help me not to give up. Help me not to go home and make this a failure. Help me to find something valuable,
When you were hungry, did you just knock on those doors, or did you go to restaurants, or how did you? When you were hungry, did you just knock people's doors, and was it just goodwill, someone giving you something to eat?
That was exactly what we did. We just knocked on doors, But it's touch and go, In fact, cold calling often doesn't work too well at all. But we got smarter as we went on, and we would go into a shop, for example, and ask for food, and often they would have something out of date, or but they definitely had food, I remember one day we were in a park, and there was this family having a picnic, and we waited until they finished the picnic, and we went up and asked them, and they gave us all the rest of the food,
Sometimes people are skeptical of those who look like homeless people, and they really run from you rather than give you something.
Exactly, but people are really good. It's amazing, it's amazing if you're a bit more trustworthy. I remember as we went on, things started to work out, and one day this guy got us a hotel room, bought us a room, and we were able to wash. We hadn't washed for 3 weeks, and the bath water was black, with washing our clothes and stuff. That was an amazing experience. We were going over this mountain one day. It was the World Cup that year, '94. Ireland was playing, and we were sleeping in a stable, We found just an old stable in a field, and we went across the road. There was this bar, and the Irish game was on, and Ireland won. It was that game against Germany, and Ray Houghton scored a goal. And it was the happiest night we ever had. It was like we were drunk. We hadn't touched a drop, But I'll never forget that night. But I remember that experience almost every day. I remember that. Have you prayed about this, Have you prayed about this? Have you brought this to God? Have you trusted that God's in this somewhere? And have you given yourself to this completely, I always remember that, and it was such a learning, the best faith learning ever, learning to trust and learning to let go. And remember I said learning to get through the fear. I have a number of articles on the internet about praying with fear and anxiety, because they're not from God. I see people all the time that come into me and say, I've got this desperate anxiety, think I'd hardly go outside the door, I said, have you prayed about this, Have you brought this to God? Have you really given this whole thing to God? And I've seen people turn around, amazing things happen, whenever you can harness that in a positive way. And also not to canonize fear or anxiety, right? I've seen this. People kind of take it as given. I'm an anxious person. God must have made me this way. Therefore, there's nothing I can do about it. You see that? As if I'll just accept it and I'll live with it. It's not from God. It's not good, It's not good for us to name the things that are not from God and not good, and to actively work against them, not just to put up with them or to tolerate them or to go with them, but to actually work against them, deal with it, Get help, get counseling, pray about this, bring it to God, change your life with God's help. I'm getting carried away now. Somebody stop me. Somebody else want to ask something?
Just a practical question. How fit do you need to be? And do you need to exercise? And do you need to get into training before you go?
That's a really good question. It's one of the big Camino themes, because people say, you need to be super fit. And you see a lot of people that are really fit doing it, and people go along, at high speed and are you're burning everybody off and all that. But you don't have to be fit. You just have to be reasonably healthy. And the key to it is to cut it down to size, So don't walk the full thing. They have these stages. I've just got a few other slides that might be helpful here. This is just Santiago, Tomb of St. James, the different routes. But one of the big concepts of the Camino is this thing about a stage. So you see along the bottom is the kilometers. Normally it's about 20 kilometers from one hostel to another. But there's other options in between. See, there's other towns in between. You can stop, cut it in half, for example, which makes it easier to do that. But a lot of people train on the Camino, right? I mean, obviously it's better to do some training. I would often do like a week or two. Cave Hill in Belfast. I'd be up there with a bag full of bricks, walking up and down, trying to get in shape. But you can train a lot of it on the Camino. You get into the way of walking of it, But obviously it's a bit more painful if you're not ready for it. But you don't have to be super fit. And I would say Anybody could do the Camino. Anybody in this room can do it, you know. The other thing, there's lots of services that will help you, you know. These Camino companies will book the hotels for you. This is the luxury option, right? There's the pilgrim option, which is the hostels and carry your own bag. Then there's the luxury option, the hotel, all your meals, and they carry your bag, send it ahead, you know. So you just carry a light rucksack. But again, you just do it whatever way you can do it. Get yourself on the trail, you know, and get a taste of it. A lot of people do the last 100 kilometers, which is the minimum you need for a certificate. This is the credential. Oh, there's a special credential, it's called, or certificate you get at the end. 100 kilometers is the minimum you need. You have to get these stamps in your passport. Oh, this is the passport. Then every night you stay in a hostel and you get a stamp in it to prove that you've been there. At the end, they check your passport. There's a stamp for every day. And towards the end, you have to get, in the last 100, you have to get 2 stamps a day to prove you didn't take the bus, you know, all the way. But it's the Camino is an extraordinary thing. You know, if you get a chance to do it, even part of it, even a small part of it, I always say, do whatever you can and do whatever way that you can do it, you know. And I've met people of all ages and abilities and sizes and shapes and every single thing, you know. And the solidarity on the Camino with other people, you meet people readily and easily, and people tell you their lives, you know. It's an extraordinary experience to restore your faith in human nature, you know, to realize people are fundamentally good, you know. People want to help you. And again, the number of people that have helped me at different moments and have helped me get through things, it's really something else. Any other questions or observations? And anybody here done the Camino? Just give me an idea. Oh, there you go. Put your hand up if you've done any of it. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, a lot of people here know what I'm talking about. Then it's a transformative experience, and it sounds mad, right? It sounds crazy. You know, you walk all day in very little gear, and you're staying in these simple accommodations, and why would you do that? But it is, and here's the thing: it is the gospel magnified. You know, you meet yourself on the road, and you meet God big time. You know, it's difficult. There's challenges, but the joy of just walking, of being there, you know, being out on the road and being alive, you know, and trusting this is what God made me for, you know. We are all pilgrims, remember, in this world. We are all pilgrims. See all that stuff? Get rid of all that stuff. It's not going to help you. You can't take it with you. Stop watching TV. Stop sitting on the sofa, you know. Just get up and walk. Even if you just walk around where you are, you know. Here's my other Camino tip, is that first thing in the morning, to walk first thing, but when you get out of bed, just put your walking shoes on and get out the door. If you think about it, you won't do it, right? This is the thing. If you think about it at all, but if you put on your stuff and get out the door and see the sunrise, and it is an amazing, the sunrise is there every single day, and we're just not there, you know. So to see the world and nature, and to be out there and to be walking, is a little Camino tip that you can do every day wherever you are. To be in nature helps. To be in the park, you know, wherever you are. I'm out in the waterworks most mornings, you know, in North Belfast, and that is just a beautiful experience. The swans, you know, on my doorstep. But somebody else got an observation, or maybe some of the other Camino people can give us a sample of their experience of it.
I think the amazing thing was there was no phones, nothing. You were there and everybody had the same idea, get to the Camino.
just get to the cathedral. And it was just, everybody passed you, buen Camino. There was a goodness in everybody. You couldn't explain to anybody the feeling that it gave you. And then every now and again, maybe you'd be tired. There was one day we started off in the dark. It was only 22 kilometres, but it was 31 degrees. And we started off in the dark, so, you know, and it seemed like 50 kilometres. Anyway, you're really tired, and then all of a sudden you'll come across this beautiful wee church. And then all of a sudden you're just totally uplifted, and you're, you know, if anybody could possibly do it, you know, do it. And there's no such thing as an age limit. You go, well, you need to be a wee bit of a walker, but it's amazing, amazing. Joe. I'll take that. Joe was on the Camino, he'd done them.
Yeah, I was fortunate to be able to do the whole Camino also. Yeah, I'm very grateful to have had the experience. And I always say, looking back, there were 3 things that helped me. I brought with me the little novena prayer book from Clonard, so I would read just like the morning prayer, the night prayer from that. Second, my dad, God rest him, he gave me a tube of deep heat before I left, and that helped the sore muscles. And then third thing, I did yoga every day more before I started to walk in, and in the evening to help stretch, and it was a godsend too. So I echo completely what Anne said as well. It's a really life affirming experience. So I would recommend it to anyone. I stayed in the hostels. So, yeah.
What I imagined was that we would actually see the route, but it seemed that we were bus to an hotel, bus back to a road, you know, but I was a bit disappointed, I have to say.
No, I think you're onto something there. Sometimes these organised pilgrimages can really take away a lot of the value of it. There's a huge, on the Camino, there's a huge kind of ascetical thing, you know, penitence and giving up stuff. And it seems mad in today's world, which is so full of comfort, you know, and ease. But that is where the joy is, you know. The joy is in the challenging yourself, in the getting on the road and walking, simple lifestyle, being in nature, and just being out there on the road without any protection or without any big fancy technology. It's extraordinary. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly, and that's understandable as well. You know, it takes a huge confidence to step into that. You know, and sometimes we need a bit of a transition. Sometimes we need help in order to make that. You know, so that's what I was saying. Don't be worried about getting a company to help you, or somebody carries your bag. You know, you just do it whatever way you can, and get a flavour of it. I know people sometimes do the first 100 kilometres with getting their bags carried, staying in hotels the first time they do it, and then you realise, why am I paying through the nose for this? This is so simple, I could just do it myself, you know. You get your backpack and you walk and you get the hostels and everything, you know. But thank you, that's beautiful words, you know, that you put on it there.
You know, you have to trust God's with you in it all. The only disappointing thing for me in the booking of it was, I was going to be away the Sunday that our folk group were being broadcast, and that was the only disappointing thing. And I'm walking up in a forest, up this hill, I could hardly breathe, and then we got to this lovely bit, and the next thing, my granddaughter hands me the phone, and I got the whole folk group. There I was in Galatia, and I got the whole Mass from here, and I just felt, God has just given me an extra blessing. It was, I can't explain to anybody. And the last morning before we left, after we had done it, we were getting ready to come home in the plane, and I got a text from my son, "Is this your father?" Linda had put a wee memory card of her daddy on the road, and somebody who knew him had come back 3 days later, and it was nearly as if God was sort of saying, yes, you done it, and this is the blessing. And there was Billy's memory card as we were getting ready to go for the plane. I can't explain to anybody the feeling and what the Camino done for me. Thank you.
Well done. Yeah, there's a kind of a magic about the Camino that these amazing things happen, you know, these so-called coincidences, you know, or God incidences where people go to extraordinary lengths to help other people. You know, things happen. You know, like remember I said about I met this Jesuit, the same name as my brother in Santiago, and he brought me out to the end of the Camino where I had this extraordinary experience. I mean, that was God acting for sure, you know, big time. And then the preparation, though, to get there, the whole walk up to that point was leading up to that point. I realized afterwards God was preparing me for something, and God was teaching me to let go all the time, stop trying to control things, because our world today is all about control, you know. I have control as if that was a great thing, you know, and we lose so much of life because we're so tightly wound up and holding on to things so tightly, you know. And it's not from God, and it's not good, you know. So to let go, to trust, let go of that fear. Often it's fear and anxiety behind all this. But somebody else want to say something?
I just want to say that, you know, your words are very true for me, because in a very north down way, I was very worried about what type of food I would be having on the Camino. So I took some Marks and Spencer's with me in my backpack, and within, I would say, 15 minutes, it was all dumped. Because my husband and my daughter were walking on miles ahead of me, and I was coming with my cans of sparkling water and fruit, you know. So it was about letting go and, you know, living in the simpler way with cabbage soup at night.
Yeah. Yes, that's lovely. You get taught, you know, trying to carry all the food would really wreck you. So thank you.
Hi, Father. My wife and I did the Camino, I think it was 2017. Due to an injury, I couldn't walk it, but that's why we bought bikes in Pamplona and Decathlon, and they sorted the bikes out, and it was a great experience. We did get up first thing in the morning to get a good start, and we did have lights in our bikes. There was one place we went through, and it was very heavy. There were fires in the area, and very heavy smoke, and it was a great experience. The hostels, they're mixed dorms, as you know. The beds are very close together, and you have to remember where you are, because if you had rolled over, it could have been inappropriate, because you weren't with your wife. Well, you could have been with somebody else's wife, but the food, very big, the pilgrims' food in the evening, that's where the crack was. That's where you met people, and they shared your experience. Cycling was a wee bit different, because if you're walking, you met the same people, they maybe stopped and then you caught up with them, or the other way around. And the way that the hostels are positioned, you would have probably met up with them later on in the day. But cycling was a wee bit different. We didn't really meet the same people again. It wasn't quite the same. We did go to the occasional hotel just to live a little, but you did get into a routine, and when you got to the hostel, you made sure you got the showers first, and you washed whatever you had and hung out to dry. And all the things that you learn, you get smarter. But I think it was 787 kilometres, because of the photograph on my phone there, I was looking it up, and the certificate and the passport and everything. And it was a great experience. And we didn't go out to finish there, but that maybe for another time. And my wife is actually going to do it this year, but I'm going in a camper van. I'm not doing it. She's going first for a couple of weeks, and then myself and the dog are going over, and we'll be there for a few weeks in Spain, but we're driving. But it was a good experience. I would recommend it.
Thank you. Well done. Yeah, finding a way of doing it, you know, finding some way of doing it that respects my injury or whatever it is, you know, just to get on the road and to get a taste of this. Somebody else?
You speak of challenges, you speak of challenges. What would you say are the main challenges? Is it the hilly terrain? Is it very hilly? Or is it the heat? Or what would you say are the main challenges?
No, there is all of that. You know, there's the physical challenges. There's there's blisters and sore muscles and that sort of thing. So you meet your limits is one of the key things. You know, your limits of energy. You know, how far you can walk and all that. And it's, you talk about meeting yourself. Well, the routes are different. You know, some of them are more hilly. You can select, and often people will select a route that suits them. You know, is a bit flatter. But hills are tough and all that. But the main difficulty is what's in here, though. That's the big challenge, you know. Facing your fears is the biggest challenge, you know. That's the thing, because that's what stops you from doing things, you know. I remember being up in the mountains on my own and facing into this really difficult stretch, you know, and reading the guidebook said, if you're on your own and it's raining, do not attempt this route, you know. And I was on my own and it was raining, and I decided not to do. I decided to take a bus around it. I think it was a good call, you know, but I had to agonize over, what am I going to do here? Am I being fearful or am I being wise, you know? But it teaches you about making good decisions and about, the Jesuits call it discernment. What's the best thing to do here? Sometimes it's good to push yourself, but sometimes it's good to step back, you know. And getting lost is a real learning experience. Getting lost, you know, and having to retrace your steps, the frustration of it all, you know. Leaving your poles behind in the last town, having to go back to get them, that's a real killer. Having to retrace your steps, you know. Forgetting a piece of equipment, you know. Yeah. Yeah. Where were you?
We went over the Pyrenees.
Oh, yeah.
And it was May and it was cold and damp as well.
Yeah. That's right. Going over the Pyrenees is on the French route, which is a huge mountain at the very beginning. It's an enormous challenge, you know, on your first day. So it's a real killer. Some people avoid that, though, by starting a bit later, which can be wise unless you're fit, you know. Jonathan?
I was really interested in what the experience was like of writing these up, because I guess in a sense you're kind of recreating the experience, and I just was curious how that felt, you know, doing the writing.
Sure. Yeah, that was another part of the whole experience. Obviously, was writing it up, writing a book about it afterwards was an extraordinary experience. It was like another Camino in itself, because you have to get over all these hurdles. You know, I'd never written a book before, so had to, you know, try to do this. I had to get help. Obviously, the woman I worked for was enormously helpful, and she helped me to write. You have to write a proposal, a book proposal. I used to think, you know, you write the book, and then you bring it to a publisher, but of course you don't do that. You write a proposal saying this is what the book's about, and this is who it's aimed at, and this is the marketing, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I had to write one chapter. So I wrote the last chapter, which is the one about burning the T-shirt, and I put that in, you know. And then the editor asked me, he said, we want to see another chapter. So I wrote the second last chapter, you know, and I put that in. And then they got the book deal. So then I had started at the end, so I kept writing this next. I wrote it in reverse, you know, which sounds crazy, but it actually fitted, it worked, you know, and you know what you need to put in order to make it fit with the next one, etc. But it was a real experience, you know. Fortunately, I was on a kind of sabbatical year, my Jesuit training, so I had time, you know. Then I had access to that woman who helped me, and she reviewed the chapters, The other thing was that I had about 5 people reviewed the book for me, different moments and editors. So the whole thing about writing is an exercise in humility, allowing other people to critique your work and not being precious about it. And that's what I mean about letting go, not letting your ego dictate or pride, So just to be humble enough to be able to modify what you've written and change things and help to make it more accessible and easier, But it was a journey in itself, and fortunately I'd kept notes. I think a lot of people do this on the Camino. The journal is called. You write up at the end of the day what's happened, and that's really helpful. That's another kind of spiritual technique. You reflect on your day, you write it up. So I think that's my alarm going off. That's my alarm to tell me how to stop talking. So I had my notes that are written. I had all these photographs I'd taken, and then I would Google the place where I had been, and I could recreate the place and the experiences, and that was really helpful in order to be able to write it. You have to go back, but your memory doesn't always work so well. You need something to help you to remember, And then you need a story. You need a good story, and it has to go somewhere. It has to start off somewhere. And then I used the Ignatian spirituality, the Jesuit tips for how to find God is written into the book. About how to discern, how to find your way, how to pray through difficult moments. And there's all these rules of thumb, Ignatian rules of thumb. About one of them is never make a decision when you're down. Have you heard this one? It's one of the fundamental ones. Never change a decision you've made. Whenever you're down, you're in bad form. If you're angry or hungry or tired, never make a decision, because it's not going to be a good one. It's just a reaction, So to stick to those decisions, that helped me a lot, Stick to your path. No matter things are going wrong, it's cold, you're wet, you've got to keep on that path. And just one step at a time, Just keep taking that next step and you'll get there. But do not make a big decision, dive off into some other path, just get lost. Is that enough, Jerry?
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Father McManus, for just a brilliant evening. I'll be looking up the Ignatian tips again. Just before we go, could I say a few words of thanks to people working behind the scenes to get tonight going? First of all, Anne. Thank Anne, particularly for coming in and getting the heat on, setting everything up. And John over here in the corner, who actually is going to make a recording of this tonight for those that couldn't come. But whenever I heard, Father, that you were going to use the PowerPoint, I was thinking of a projector and a screen, and then I was thinking back to years ago, my own teaching days, but now the 21st century. I called in next door, and Chris O'Neill, the principal, helped me along this afternoon with this amazing technology, which is going to be great to know we have. And that's about it. And just to say again, Father, that the publications, the Redemption Road and other books are at the back there. John, one of our pastoral council members, has got those for you. And again,
I'm happy to sign the books.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Father. And again, just on behalf of everybody, to thank you for a great evening and very well spent. Thank you.